Happy Monday, everybody, and thanks for checking into the TDR Trade to Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales, as we are coming in hot here on a Monday. As usual, it is our MSOS Mondays with Dan Aarons as well. Big company last week with some strong earnings that stood out more so than any other. Cresco Labs CEO Charlie Bachtell will be joining us in just a minute. So let's jump right into it because this market right now seems to be hot off of pending rumors. Anthony Varell, good to see you. Happy Monday. How are things?
How's it going? Good to see you. Nice weekend. It was a great day on Friday. Going into the close. Nice action this week. Feels like we got some momentum.
All is good again in cannabis land, right? We needed news a week and a half ago. We were worried about how this would bleed out because we thought, man, there might not be any news for a couple of months, but all it takes is a roundtable discussion and a few little rumors for floating around, and this industry is hot once again. But yes. Yeah. By the way, nice haircut. I wore a hat today, but I just wanted everybody to know I got my haircut too. So we must have put it in the memo to get our haircuts before Monday's show. But let's jump into it. Let's welcome in the CEO of Cresco Labs, Charlie Bachtell, back to the podcast. Been a few months, but good to see you. How are things?
Guys, things are good. Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
I think things are very good for you too. As I said off the top, I think out of all the earnings that we came across last week, yours stood out more so, I think, than most companies. And clearly, people loved from what they read, and stock's been performing, seeing a lot of support again here today. But all in all, what'd you think of the latest earnings reports and some of the feedback that you've received on your end from investors?
So, I mean, overall, I think all of those are positive. Feel good about it. Good feedback from it. And look, I think more than anything else, it just feels good to see a strategy get laid out. Get absolutely absorbed and adopted by the greater team and executed against. And the results happen from that.
So we were speaking with Jason Wild from TerraSyn last week, and I asked him if you had to describe one word what the year 2023 was for the company, and he said foundational. And as you sit here and you talk about putting a strategy in place and having a lot of that foundation, I guess, put in place now, would you describe it kind of the same way as to what 2023 was for the company? And then that's segueing into, your earnings. You're saying some of the highlights that we look at 2025, 2026 is big years coming up, but a lot of the groundwork was laid last year.
Yeah, for us, 2023, we called the year of the core. Where we really got back to basics, where we got back to our, focusing on our core markets, our core brands, our core stores, our core products, our core people. And really, again, just like, not only did everybody buy in and totally engage and make it happen, but now it's part of the DNA. It's how we look at everything. It's optimized, it's rationalized, and it's focusing on the things that move needles. So it was a really good year, foundational.
Yeah,
that's right. So I mean, you talk about the core and you talk about the foundation. I mean, the one thing that stuck out to me the most was you maintained the number one market position in Illinois, Pennsylvania, as well as Massachusetts. Those are hard markets. I mean, those are very competitive, hyper competitive markets. I know you were early out of the gate in several of those markets. How are you doing that? Is it retail efficiencies? Is it leveraging data? Is it the product? I mean, kind of walk me through how you've maintained that over the years.
I'll tell you, what I love most about it too is you've got big states where we were first out of the gate, and then you've got Massachusetts where we were not. And then you've got a couple of states that are pretty high concentration of MSO presence. And then Massachusetts, which is a relatively fragmented market. We're also doing great in Michigan. It's nice to see the competitiveness come through with success in both of these styles of markets. It really shows us that not only do the brands have equity, but these teams they're just firing on all cylinders. I couldn't feel better about where we're at as an organization. I feel like the leadership team that we have in place they're assassins in the best way possible. They've got great traditional industry experience. Now they've got 4 or 5 years of cannabis experience under their belts too, with a couple of different cycles that we've gone through in that period of time. And it's just all coming together now with some really smart strategic planning and execution against it.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, and then another one of the markets that you're in, my home state, Florida. I think the acquisition of Bluma or One Plant was about 2.5 years ago. around that now. I know your flower sales were up 50% year over year, 22 to 23 milligrams THC were up 60% year over year. Walk me through that. I mean, Florida's hyper competitive. I went to a Sunnyside actually about 9 months ago. I thought the flower was average, to be honest. I went 2 weeks ago after seeing the numbers, and the flower was phenomenal. So what was that a function of? Was it dialing in the assets that you acquired and the acquisition, or kind of just growing pains that you have to work through? And I mean, it looks like Florida is going to be one of those markets for you moving forward that really grows the business.
It's a little bit of all of that, right? And this is where it flows up to the leadership level too, of kind of what my role is. My role is to make sure that I provide an environment for these leaders, these people that are in the field, in the facilities, designing what needs to be done. We have a baseline of SOPs that are pretty consistent across the framework, but each one of those has to be fine-tuned for the exact situation that you're in these markets, right? Whether it's environmental, whether it's whatever it is, facility design, they're all different. So it's the fine-tuning. You have to make sure that at the top level, you're creating an environment where they can be successful. And going back to the year of the core, where we're rationalizing out hollow revenue in areas of the business that were more distraction than they were productive, and giving the space and the ability for, again, these leaders to focus on the things that move the needle the most for us, you start to see those results 3, 6, 9, 12 months after that. So it's wonderful what we saw out of that Florida team. They really came together. You've got less silos, you've got more truncated leadership structures. So the people that are on the ground are making these decisions very quickly, and they're right for the environment that they're in. So Florida is just another great example of that. It all kind of stems from this year of the core, being able to focus on the things that matter most. The results follow.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can attest to it. I went and bought, I think it was 7 different strains, FloraCal and the tier 1 stuff. And it was all very, very good.
Yeah, they're killing it down there.
In terms of flower. Yeah. And then I guess New York. What's your take on New York? I know we saw a headline out of New York today with Hochul wanting to, I guess, do a review top to bottom of the system. I mean, do you see that being a heavy wholesale market? If you want to go forward basis until retail kind of irons it out?
We are bullish on New York long term. It's going to be a giant market.
Yeah,
it is. Right now, in the year of the extension of the year of the core, right now it's doing more with the core in 24. Right? I like. Sorry for the cute phrasing there, but
it's great.
You can't deviate from what's working for you. And right now, New York, just from being really disciplined in capital allocation, not knowing what's going to happen in New York.
Yeah.
The market itself right now doesn't warrant significant capital investment, and that's what it takes. That's that design that's there. Don't forget, like to flip your dispensaries from medical to adult is a $5 million check. Yeah. So as we look at the footprint and see Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania, and I'm happy with the tailwinds that we're seeing over the last 72 hours of trading, but we're still in a very capital restraint environment. You've got to be super diligent, prudent with how you're allocating that next dollar. And we've got some really important things in the future for us, and New York is still struggling.
Well, we talk a lot about short-term catalysts in this industry, about initiative basically in Florida that could happen. In 13 days. You talk about Pennsylvania, Michigan, and limited licenses. I don't know how much you've been following what's going on in Washington. And I know you're focused on the day-to-day stuff, but has it piqued your interest at all in some of the developments, especially with Biden mentioning cannabis in his State of the Union and the roundtable discussion that took place on Friday?
Look, I mean, I allocate a good amount of my time to the DC effort, and I feel really good about where it's at. I'm really encouraged by what's going on there, and I know it hasn't translated to results yet. Yeah. But from our perspective, the rescheduling, everything that we're hearing there it continues to be positive on the process itself. Timing wise, I wish I had more information for you, but I mean, nobody knows the timing of when an announcement would be made. But as it relates to the legislative work, look, we came out of 2022 very disappointed. What we saw was that if your champions of your issue in DC don't really understand it, if their knowledge base is only an inch deep, just be ready to get left at the cutting room floor at the 11th hour and 59th minute. I could say ever since then, the amount of educating, the amount of communication and understanding that's been built with really important stakeholders in the legislature, it's a different story.
Why do you think that changed? Why do you think that changed?
Effort. I mean, honestly, effort. It really is. It's getting in front of in telling the cannabis story. Cannabis has, as we all know, cannabis has a super compelling story.
Of course,
it just makes all the sense in the world, and it has to be done right. But it also needs resources and able to do it. You could design this perfectly, but if you starve an industry for resources, it'll fail. I think we're also seeing data points like when we were having these conversations in Q3 and Q4 of 22. New York hadn't happened yet. It was all still on the come, right? It was this beautiful kind of idealistic approach to cannabis, and it's going to be perfect. And then what happened? There's no capital. And without capital, it doesn't work.
Of course.
Right? So you have these real life data points that you could show. Also, even from the conservatives' perspective, if you don't provide resources to the best version of cannabis, even if you don't like cannabis, but a regulated, compliance-focused version of cannabis, if you starve it for resources, just understand what you're signing up for. You're signing up for the illicit market and unregulated access to products that are very similar. So, I would say time happened, and effort,
well said.
and educating. Yeah.
It's trial and error, like anything in an emerging industry. But do you think a lot of congressmen, like, look, there was the descheduling announcement. We had Don Murphy on, lobbyist, a week and a half ago. Little discouraged to say the least when he's brought up descheduling President Biden, because he feels like if they are going to move ahead with something like that, there should be changes, knowing it's pretty crazy to think how many people are spending how much time in jail for like minuscule charges. But outside of that, that's obviously an important initiative. And like you said, time changes all things. When it comes to rescheduling, we look at a lot of states that are in debt, and we look at taxation purposes and what this could generate. Do you think a lot of people from Washington are now understanding that side of the story when it comes to this industry?
Yeah, I think that's maybe the next evolution of understanding of like the potential. Really, right now, it is public safety and public health, right? And I think both sides can wrap their heads around that, and both sides are seeing sort of the downfalls and the risk associated with not supporting regulated cannabis. Like social responsibility initiatives fail, public safety and public health initiatives fail. So that's, I think, what right now, that's what will bring people together on this issue. The rest of that's even like, that really isn't what's driving the discussions currently. I think those will be part of the next discussions on like how to do cannabis right. Right now, they're still at the early stages of whether or not we should have access to banks. The next conversation will include all the upside, tax revenue, job creation, and the like.
All good problems to have, right?
Speaking of tax, I know Kim shocked everybody on her earnings call with her tax refund. I mean, are there any unique tax strategies that you guys are working on, or any plans to file anything in that nature, or kind of just let it be for the time being?
No, look, I think we have an obligation to always be looking at these opportunities. It's something that we never not think about. We all, I think some of us have slightly different takes on it. I think Kim has shown us a wonderful, wonderful roadmap of a strategy that can be effective. I don't know that it's necessarily replicatable by everybody. So, but everybody's got to find their strategy that will create hopefully a similar outcome, and we're no different.
Lots of exciting things pertain to the industry right now, isn't there?
A ton.
Yeah, I think so. One last thing I'll leave, and I'll put you on the spot. Don Murphy, as I said, was on a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And he said, look, with President Biden basically saying that, mentioning about descheduling, he's crossed a line. There's like the point of no return. He believes that rescheduling will take place at some point this year. And if it's going to happen, which he believes it will, it'll happen between now and July. Do you agree with that?
I do.
You do?
I do. Yeah. And Don's a good guy. He's he's the only person that I see every time I'm down there. So I appreciate all the effort and the work he puts in. It really does take as many different touch points as possible down there to get change. And he's definitely been a part of the last 18 months of creating a much more educated, engaged legislature.
We need to have a side conversation with you because we're actually, Anthony and I are headed to Washington with him April 10th on a Wednesday. We're going in with our camera crews.
I'll be down there.
Will you?
Oh, nice.
On that day. Yeah. Perfect.
Yep. Nice.
We'll have to pull you aside, say, what are questions that we need to ask? But we'll get a little direction and advice from you, but that'll be great.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, that's incredible. Listen, I appreciate you checking in, and congrats, obviously, on the latest numbers. And obviously, people like it because the stock has performed extremely well. But anxious to see what the spring season presents for us. And hopefully, one last question I will say, because people do want to get to know you a little bit more. What do you love most about this industry?
Oh, this is the most fascinating thing that I've ever seen in my life. Like, I hate to give you a broad, I've known that though since the first 48 hours of looking at it. I love the opportunity that presents and the challenges that are associated with it. It's something that I never stop thinking about it. I'm reading about this as I fall asleep at night, and I read about it when I wake up in the morning. I love every part of this industry, including the challenges of it.
Yeah. Cool as a cucumber.
When else do you get something that changes sort of culture, the way people think about medicine, the criminal justice system, and creates the next massive consumer products category in the United States? Like, it's a very unique opportunity.
I love the way you break that down and section that off. But, when you look at it that way, that's why people are so excited. And I think it's something to remember. I think if people ask us why you're in this space, but it's polarizing. And anyone you ever meet in this space, they don't just like it, they love it, which is great, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Charlie, appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's great.
Talk soon. We'll see you in Washington.
Cool. Yes, looking forward to that. That's awesome. We've run into him in Washington. A lot of people are commenting that Anthony went from presidential to CFO with the haircut.
Don't even know what that means, but I will take it.
You had the wave going, buddy, with the dollar bill before. Anyway,
I guess that's yep.
Let's bring in Guap. Had a few people wondering if he is part of the podcast today. Of course he is. Good to see you. That was a good interview, don't you think?
Yeah, it was great. And even the last question, it was good to see sort of Charlie smile and talk about why he's really in the space. Yeah. I just love that kind of information and color because it's not all about spreadsheets and margins. It's about why we're really doing this.
Yeah, he understands, I think, the industry from multiple angles, but probably why he has got a great company with a strong market share, but kudos to him. All right, into the wire, TDR Trade To Black podcast. We have actually a guest that's on here today. So on that note, Mitch, cue the music. MSOS Monday with Mr. Dan Aarons. Good to see you, sir. And we got you into the wire segment here today. What do you think of that?
Fun. It's going to be fun. Thanks for bringing me on.
Well, appreciate it. What'd you think of that interview with Charlie, though? Like anybody's saying, he's like between now and July. Yes, rescheduling is going to happen, but what a guy, seems very, very sharp.
Well, you guys might have, picked up a little bit from that, but no, we know that Charlie, among the CEOs and chairmen, is probably the most connected in Washington and doing the most work behind the scenes in Washington.
Good point.
To his credit, he doesn't go shooting his mouth off or tweets off about it. But no, Charlie's very connected and he is working it in Washington. So we appreciate him that way.
Yeah. That's interesting and good to know. All right, gents, let's welcome in everybody into the wire here on TDR's Trade To Black podcast here on a Monday. Stocks ripping as we went into the close here today. But let's first begin involving the news in Washington on Friday with Vice President Kamala Harris in a roundtable discussion where she stated that, quote, it's absurd when it came to the current classification of marijuana under federal law. She later said, quote, I'm sure the DEA is working as quickly as possible and will continue to do so. And we look forward to the product of their work. Dan, I'll begin with you, but to me personally, I think this is gaining a lot of momentum, especially in the last week and a half.
Yep.
We keep saying we don't know if rescheduling is going to happen. I don't know how this doesn't feel like it's not going to happen based off of some of the stuff that's developed in the past 10 days. Like there is some pretty obvious signs. It's just a matter of when this is going to be announced.
Yeah, we were watching it, of course, wondering if it was going to be just, more political posturing and lip service, or, I was pretty sure there weren't going to be any major announcements coming out of it. They're not going to give that to Kamala. But once she got to the correct part, pretty strong wording. And we appreciate that. Everybody needs to remember that, well, two things to remember. One, there's still going to be more volatility. There's going to be ups and downs, and some of the garbage I saw spewed out over the weekend about, the DEA is still, not wanting to do it or pushing back and all this stuff. On the other hand, yes, Kamala represents the White House, and the head of the DEA is appointed by the president and by the White House.
Yep.
So pretty strong wording that I am comfortable thinking it's simply a matter of when and not if, and anything else should be foolish to think.
I couldn't help but feel like this is a strong effort for going after the younger vote. I don't know how you guys feel, but, I'm reading between the lines here, and I know I'm speculating, but I 100% believe this is one of the main reasons why we are seeing a lot of conversations. Sorry, you were going to say something, Guaper?
Yeah, I joked about it. I kind of took a couple swings at it in terms of just novelty. It's probably the most important thing that happened to the industry since the unredaction of the HHS recommendation. I mean, Kamala literally pushed our agenda for us on a national stage in the White House. It reverberated through the mainstream media. She said exactly what we wanted her to say. So, I mean, yeah, I think it was very important. I mean, but they still need to do it. I'm fully in alignment with Dan. I think it's still going to be volatile. I think we could be seeing it sometime soon, but it was great. It was great to see, and it was even better to hear.
For sure. I hate to be the cynical one of the bunch, but yeah, it is an election cycle. Let's keep that in mind. But also, Chris Goldstein, we also the intro, we saw the opening statement, and she said all the right things, including calling it absurd, which I loved, that it's on Schedule 1. So, but Chris Goldstein, he actually was in the room for the closed door session and was willing to do a Q&A with Marijuana Moment. So a couple things to be gleaned from there. He tweeted, "I hope everyone can recognize the importance of Vice President Harris calling to legalize marijuana in a room that Richard Nixon built."
Huh.
So
these are... She didn't call it legal.
Behind closed doors.
Oh, okay.
And again, for me, it's more about the signal than the words, right? We've got it so many news stories, so much sort of intelligence coming out that this Schedule 3 is happening. I'm reading less into the words said behind closed doors, because that could just be sort of for votes or not really understanding the issue, what's actually happening here. But for me, it's still a very strong signal. Now, behind closed doors, they pressed her on the DEA timing, and she basically said they're working on it and couldn't give any additional information there. But to the rest of the world, yeah, this is a strong signal. Fat Joe's got 6 million followers. He's tweeting all about it.
Yeah.
I mean, all in all, a very positive sector illuminating headline.
What's President Biden's current approval rating? Do we know? Is it like less?
Somewhere in the high 20s, maybe
like
in the 30s.
Could be a lot higher if you did this.
Yeah. So there's a tweet that came out today. Somebody online basically said abortion and cannabis actually could get President Biden to win this election. How much influence do you think this cannabis vote has, Dan, that could swing in his favor? Like, do you think that it's, look, for those that follow the industry like us, it's everything. But outside of this, there's a lot of people that don't follow it. But how much truth is there, do you think, that this, change of legislation could really swing things in a positive way? How much influence it has?
Well, there's two different ways of looking at it. And the first one is it's going to be such a massive face plant if they don't come through with this.
True. That's a good point.
That was strong wording coming out of the White House on Friday and mentioned in the State of the Union. If he doesn't follow through, it is a massive, massive loss. Now, the other side is how much, voter is it going to swing? And the White House doesn't want to hear me say this. The Democratic Party doesn't want to hear me say this. Not much.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you too.
It is not going to send people running to the polls to vote for their great white hero of this, 80-something-year-old man who has very, very low, voter approval ratings at this point. But again, I try to look at most things as a glass half full, but this one's glass half empty.
Yeah,
they
but
have
Dan,
to come through now, or it's going to be a huge loss.
You answered it though. If he doesn't do this, this is a face plant. Like, they have to obviously commit to something now, because as Don said, it's a line they've crossed where it's a point of no return, because the upside may be minimal, but the downside is a lot worse. Never looked at it that way.
It's political suicide if they don't get this done. But I mean, if you want to be real, they've got more to lose than to gain.
Yeah.
They're not winning the election on cannabis.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fact.
It's not going to outweigh the border and inflation and everything else.
Yep. Guap, go ahead.
Kamala has not said anything about cannabis since the last election, so it's not a coincidence that it's coming up now. I think it's always been a better carrot. If you elect us, we'll do this. So I thank goodness that this whole process with the DA is sort of should be a bit removed from that election cycle carrot type political strategy.
Yep.
But I mean, it sounds like it's going to happen, and we should all be excited. But we're all in wait and see mode, and whenever a catalyst is upcoming, it feels like time slows down, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it does feel different this time. I actually do think that with that State of the Union, was there really much movement off of that? But with this roundtable discussion, it just makes me believe that this is a top of mind. And to your point, Dan, this has to be something that they have to move ahead with, because the ramifications of not doing something, the downside, to your point too, Anthony, is not good. Let's move now to headline 2 here on Into the Wire and the TDR Trade To Black podcast, and the countdown in Florida, where it's T-minus 13 days until the Florida Supreme Court countdown decision on whether or not adult use will be included on the ballot come next fall. Again, no news is good news concerning this topic. So, Anthony, do you think, the Supreme Court will just let this shot clock, I guess, run out and we don't hear anything? Is that what you're thinking?
I'm betting that they're going to let it run out and it's going to automatically go to the ballot. If you look around the country, politicians, they are speaking about cannabis, but when it comes to action, if they have the ability to let something happen, but they don't actually have to do it, they prefer that, especially in Florida. Florida's red. I mean, there's a lot of red in Florida. There's also a lot of blue in Florida, but I mean, the Supreme Court and the politicians that be, if they can sit back, not say a damn thing, and just let it go to the ballot in November. I'm willing to bet that that's what they're going to let happen.
Yeah.
And I don't expect to hear anything in the next 13 days. Dan,
you agree with that?
Yeah, if we're talking about putting bets on it, it is March Madness time. So, I agree with Anthony completely. They'll let it run out. They tried to get this through a couple of years ago. It got rejected because of the wording not being specific to being contrary to federal law, etc. They've added that wording. There's still some game playing about if the wording is sufficient, but I think at the end of the day, if I'm betting, I agree with Anthony, and they're going to let it run out.
I think you're right. March Madness, that does kick off this week. Knock
What
this
is
off
it?
your
It's
bucket
this
list.
week?
Yes, it starts. Selection Sunday was yesterday. If you ever want to do something, Anthony and I did this 2 years ago. We went to opening weekend of March Madness. Go the first
awesome.
round of the tournament, not wait to the final four, but the first round with all the
Oh,
games.
that's what all the games are. Oh yeah,
It
Thursday through
was
Sunday.
insane. Went down to Circa and biggest sports book outside, but that was a lot of fun. But getting back to our point, Florida, Guap, I assume that you think it's the same thing. No politician's going to put his fingerprints off this. The shot clock's going to run out.
Yeah, it feels to me like Virginia, where the easiest thing to do is nothing, and it makes less of a smell if you do that, right? And then it just kind of moves quietly to the next stage. I think Mitch and I should work on a little on-screen graphic to have a countdown clock for April 1st.
Actually, not a bad idea. Mitch, what do you think, bud? If he's there. All right, let's continue on into the wire. Headline number 3 as we shift up north to this great state of New York, where news broke today involving Governor Kathy Hochul, who announced that she and her administration are initiating assessment of the Office of Cannabis Management and taps Commissioner Jeanette. What's her last name? Jeanette. Thought I had it written down. She's going to basically lead the efforts. So if we begin with you, Anthony, what is, like, I guess, this announcement mean? Why is this announcement being made? Is this in some ways indirectly acknowledging that they screwed up and now we're trying to fix this mess?
I mean, yeah, but I mean, I don't want to say it's a little bit too little too late, but it's almost too little too late. You've got companies that invested millions and millions of dollars into this state. You have a licensing program that is completely just shafted most of the applicants that have applied. I mean, there's been rumors of crony capitalism. There's been several people that are head of the OCM that have lost their jobs. It's like a rotating door. They had a bunch of DEI and social equity issues. I can go on and on and on. I think as of today, there's like 2,500 illegal dispensaries in the 5 boroughs that are hindering the legal businesses from succeeding. I mean, Charlie borderline doesn't even know when that state's going to be investable from a CapEx perspective. And I mean, he's been there. They were early in that market. I mean, sure, she wants to give a top-down review of the entire process and body of cannabis in New York State. Awesome. When they start locking doors and arresting operators in illegal dispensaries and get people licensed that actually want to operate in the legal market,
yeah,
I'll clap for her. I'll say that she did her job. But I mean, we should have been doing this 9 months ago.
Yeah, I hear you. It
shouldn't be now that this is actually happening.
Well, Dan, Anthony asked the question to Charlie, do you believe in New York? And he very professionally said, we believe in New York long-term. And that is a pretty accurate question to say, this could be the biggest market in the world at one time. Do you ever look at that and some of the people that you speak to on a day-to-day basis that says, okay, where is New York right now? We all know where it's now. We all know the changes that have to be made. But long-term, as we look at this and it tries to correct itself, are we talking 5 years or more before this market gets itself cleaned up and does become investable?
Okay. First of all, I will say New York, to be positive, it's all upside from here because it's a complete mess, complete shit show. And it has been. Now, the governor coming out saying things like that. They said that a couple months ago. They said it 6 months ago. They said it a year ago. Oh, it's a mess. We screwed up. We're going to fix it. They've been saying it over and over again.
Yeah.
I just saw a headline about a tobacco shop getting busted, and they put a padlock on the door. But then it says near the end of the article, they've already done that multiple times to the same location. They were selling cocaine with fentanyl in it out of a tobacco shop.
Jeez.
Allegedly.
Oh, thank you, Guap. You're correct. So now she's appointing yet another New York bureaucrat to try to clean it up. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So to be positive here, we were all excited years ago about New York. We said it could be the biggest cannabis market in the world. It could be bigger than California. Everything's going to be great. And then New York put their political hands all over it. So I would be very hesitant to try to give any predictions about time frame.
Yeah.
Yet I will say it's all upside from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of question marks.
You want to know when I knew New York was messed up? When they opened the first dispensary, legal dispensary, to much fanfare, and there was already 1,000 illegal ones open. The ratio was 1 to 1,000 on that day.
Yeah.
That's too far gone, right? They're forever going to be known as sort of a case study that other countries and states can learn from, So there's that. And like Dan said, it's all upside from here.
Yeah, that's for sure. Last Friday, we had Dan the Chartman on. We talked about your ETF off the top, and we were talking about support at 815. And if we closed above 855, it would really dictate the momentum going into this week. And we saw momentum going in. But like we said last Monday, we're a little nervous, but that's typical cannabis. And here we are 7 days later and go, you know what? He was right. Things are okay. But, it remains to be volatile, to say the least. But a lot of momentum to start off the beginning of the week. Anything you want to add or touch on?
No, Friday was great. I saw people asking questions over the weekend like, oh, is the fund going to get inflows? How does that work? The fund's performance is simply a reflection of the holdings in that fund. And I'm talking about any mutual fund, any ETF. Yeah. So you add up all the closing prices and number of shares of everything the fund owns, that's its performance. Nothing more, nothing less. So if people choose to invest in the fund on a red day, they're buying shares lower. If they invest in a fund on a green day, they're investing, at that day's prices. So just keep in mind the tail doesn't wag the dog. The ETF doesn't control the markets.
Yeah,
it's simply a reflection. But Friday was real nice.
Yeah,
Monday was real nice. But remember, it's not going to just go straight up. This stuff isn't easy. We don't know when that DEA decision is going to come out.
Oh, but when it does, Dan.
but when it does. But keep in mind, there's going to be mainstream media headlines saying the DEA is thinking about not doing it. There's going to be people saying drugs are bad. So, it's not going to be a straight line, people. Still expect some
bumpiness,
extreme volatility.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Other than that, I'm in a better mood than not.
Yeah,
so,
I hear you.
Obviously you've got YOLO as well. And we saw the Canadians that were leading today in terms of gain. Is there anything you could attribute to that other than they've got better plumbing listed on the NASDAQ and just more access to liquidity? Yeah.
I mean, come on. If you're over the weekend, if you're being social with friends or anything like that, you talk to them about cannabis, they're going to say, oh yeah, I own that Tilray. Or how about that Canopy or Aurora? So now I saw a stat that in the first couple hours today, Tilray had traded more shares than all of the MSOs combined on Thursday and Friday. It's just freaking ridiculous. But if you don't know about it, people listening, look up the fund YOLO because it needs more love. It was the predecessor to MSOS. It existed about a year before, while we were doing a lot of approvals and paperwork, working with the SEC and the NYSE behind the scenes before we launched MSOs. But it owns MSOs. That's the number one holding. We waived the fees. It has some Tilray in there, but it's still an actively managed fund. That doesn't mean we're trading it every day. That just means it's not following an index. So we can choose to own a lot more Village Farms and High Tide and less Canopy and no Aurora. And we underweight Tilray, things like that.
Wow.
So, Robert Griffith's refi. Refi is a component of YOLO as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. We own just as much refi as we do of Tilray in general terms.
Well, goes to show what senior exchanges can do one day. But yeah, you get American news.
It's psychology too. I think about it. If I went to my dad right now and said, Company A is on the NASDAQ, company B is on the OTC.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yes.
Which
That's
one
what
are you allocating your capital to? He would look me dead in the face and be like, "Oh, it's an OTC stock. I don't even care." He was like, "Give me the Nasdaq. It's safe. It's a senior exchange. I mean, it's compliant. Even though the OTC stock, the fundamentals are probably 10x better. Nasdaq, NYSE, from a psychological perspective, it gives people comfort, and it implies that they have more access."
Got a good question here from Lucifer. This is the TDR Trade To Black podcast. Shad Dale's here with Anthony Varell, Guap, and along with Dan Aarons here on Mondays, MSOS Mondays. Lucifer writes, "I'm slightly ignorant, but can you explain the difference between MSOs and MSOX?"
Easily. Great question. And go to our website at advisorshares.com and read all of the warnings and disclosures and the prospectus for MSOX. So MSOS is Advisor Shares Pure U.S. Cannabis ETF. We think it is pretty much 100% exposure to U.S. only companies that are doing the majority of their business in the United States. It is almost all plant touching multi-state operators. It means growers, dispensaries, etc. It owns all those positions: Green Thumb, Curaleaf, Trulieve, etc. MSOX, on the other hand, only owns one position. It owns MSOS times 2 times exposure. And it owns total return swaps that hold MSOS, so it can have twice the exposure to MSOS as the AUM of the fund. It varies every single day because we have to try to estimate the closing price at the close every day, work with our swap counterparties, discuss the exposure up or down.
Yep.
And a whole lot of disclosure and warnings, again, about understanding the product and its extreme volatility and the way that leveraged funds work in the long term.
Well
That's
put.
One or the other.
We actually have the link Mitch just added, Lucifer, advisorshares.com/ETFs in the comments section. So have a check there and it'll direct you to kind of elaborate a little bit more on what Dan just outlined. But yeah, great explanation. Had some great comments here earlier. There was one that I wanted to read. They should make a cereal called MSOs with marshmallow, weed buds, and a little marshmallow dollar signs, writes Lucifer as well. I like that.
Brilliant.
Best idea,
Or
best
do it
idea of the day
yourself.
I've heard.
Yeah.
Cereal's poison.
Anyone out there, leave a comment below. As usual, smash that like button. As we've said in previous podcasts, that the more comments and more likes that we get, the greater chance of this video going viral. That's what YouTube loves. So if you can, please smash that like button. Leave some comments below. And if you have any questions before we let Dan go, drop them right now because here he is. So wide open. Guap, go ahead. Over to you.
Yeah, I'd love to jump back and talk a little bit about not financial advice, of course, but talk about the plumbing and some of the LPs and the plumbing they enjoy versus the OTC stocks. I know we've covered that many times, but I would just say before you go chasing runners on that with some of the LPs of the world, it would be good to look at a chart go back a year or two and see just how far they've been smashed down as well. So what can go up fast can also go down rather quickly when you have that kind of plumbing flowing. So just like with MSOX, read the disclosure I'm telling you right now before jumping into those waters.
Yeah.
No, you make a great point because if you zoom out 3 years or so, you're going to think that U.S. cannabis trades in line with Canadian cannabis. And over the last 3 years, they both sucked. Can I just say that bluntly?
Yeah.
Sure.
But for different reasons. If you look at the last 3 months, 6 months, there's been quite a separation, a big separation between the U.S. and the Canadian cannabis. And that's due to the HHS letter, the pending DEA acceptance. We think the fact that safe banking is coming. But yeah, in the short term, like the last 2 days, people see a cannabis headline and those Canadian LPs can pop.
Yes.
Because they're listed on big exchanges, but for no real good reason.
Yeah.
look at the financials of Canopy, and you shouldn't be investing in stuff like that if you don't read their financials.
Yeah, just to tack onto there,
not investment advice.
Just to get people a little excited, the day that the plumbing does open up.
Well, it's not going to be a day, Guap. It's going to be a period of time.
Fair enough.
It's going to be a process.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Right.
What Dan's sitting there going, that's where it all starts. It's right there.
Can you tell us
that? Be a hell of a heavy.
And it opens up.
It's going to be a hell of a heavy lift.
Yes. I just feel like it's sort of like a great equalization is going to occur. Institutions flow in. It's not going to be, you're right, not a wonderful day, but maybe a wonderful few months. Yeah. Just because, like I keep repeating, alcohol and tobacco are 80% institutionally owned. MSOs are under 10. I'm here for the great equalization.
Yeah, and if I wrote about that in my book, drawing parallels to the end of Prohibition, looking at the alcohol industry, the extreme volatility that the alcohol industry had back in the 1930s and 40s and so on, and the process to get as consolidated as it is now, Guap, was a period of decades and decades and decades.
Yeah.
Because now we have, huge companies like Pernod Ricard and Diageo and InBev that control all that stuff, and they gobble up the small producers. If you're a strong producer, whether it's in a designer alcohol or it's a craft brew, they will gobble you up. Or they will crush you out of business, one or the other.
Correct. Just look at beverage. Look at beverage too. I mean, beverage. You build a brand, scale it, they'll come by you right away. Just keep building and building and building and building. I'm pretty sure cannabis is gonna follow that trail for some time.
Yeah, but it's gonna be 2 or 3 decades out before you.
I look forward. I look forward to it. I'm hoping this isn't just like a 1-2 year thing and it's gone.
Dan, I see that hat. Can you reach out? We reach out to Ben all the time. How do we get him on?
Ask real nicely.
Yeah.
No, Ben's great. He's the nicest damn guy in the world. But no, he espouses keep your head down and execute and perform. And
who can argue with him with the company he's built, right?
Yeah.
We'll let you run. Last thing, you don't have to go into detail, but wow, what a week for Cybin last week. Nothing like having a end of phase 2 exit meeting with the FDA. They're going to start their phase 3 middle of this year. And while they were at it, they did another private placement for $150 million, which will basically cash them up for their entire phase 3. And what a group of investors that included. A lot of long-term biotech investors. But we got a chance to catch up with Doug Drysdale, and, great story they're building there, and what a pipeline that they've created. And it all started, I think, Anthony, going back to last year when they did the acquisition for Small Pharma. But they got some strong IP.
Yeah.
And curious to see how this industry begins to heat up. Like we talk about cannabis a lot. We can continue to flirt with just the idea of psychedelics and how it could heat up towards the back end of the calendar year.
Well, for listeners, take a look at MindMed's performance over the last year or two, and you will say, "Wow, it's the number one holding in our fund, PSIL." Because
I did see that. Yeah,
well, that's not from me buying it; it's from it performing like crazy. Yeah, so that's appreciation. But Cybin is still right up at the top, and if investors are looking for opportunity, all you got to do is look at the fund PSIL or look at a stock like Cybin, zoom out 2 or 3 years, and you're going to see a stock that's been battered, probably unfairly. And with what you just said, Shad, about where they are with the FDA right now and with their funding, oh my God, I think that's a hell of an opportunity.
Yeah. I do too. Listen, tell the team we say hi. Look forward to seeing you as usual every single Monday. Hope everybody got a chance to see this podcast today and thought it was helpful. But as always, leave questions below. Let us know if there's any questions you want us to ask Dan. We'll reach out to him and guide you in any kind of direction with any questions that you have. Dan, good seeing you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, guys.
Thanks.
All right. That was good.
I'd like to invite Ben Kovler to walk some dogs with me while chiefing dog walkers. I feel like that would be some good content there. He has a product named Dog Walkers, if you guys aren't.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the little mini joints.
Yeah.
I do like that hat. Okay, gents, that was good. As usual, folks, we launched our cannabis index and equity research reports, came out with a few Canadian companies, including Oxley, this morning. So if you want to obviously learn more, and like I said, we're putting together a lot of these research reports for the everyday investor to understand. We have the information available. Click on the link, Mitch, if you can provide in the comment section below, that would be incredible. And as usual, as I said earlier, please like, smash that like button, leave some comments below as we continue to build out this community and get this message viral. Gents, enjoy. One last thing I will say, a special Trade to Black live stream tomorrow at 4 o'clock as we bring in Raj Grover with their latest earnings with High Tide. Man, good story.
That's a dream interview for me, so I'm excited to ask some tough questions.
And people, they were saying, yes, Guap's a High Tide pumper, as what I heard yesterday in a comment. So,
I shared DD all day, every day, and yeah, I have a position in it, and I'm a big believer for sure.
Yeah. Anthony Cogniglio, good to see you, sir. Thanks for the comments. We're going to catch up with Anthony this week, too. He was with Don Murphy last week, had some tweets that came out, but there was some stuff that he heard while in Washington. So for all our audience out there, we'll get off this podcast right now, give Anthony a shout, and we'll come back on Wednesday with some feedback for you. But tomorrow, 4 o'clock, Raj Grover from High Tide, and then we continue onwards and upwards for the rest of the week on Wednesday. But gents, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thanks, everybody, for logging on, and we'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock.
Thanks, everybody.
We don't pay admission and the bouncers don't check us.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we